so important, the networking piece. Like, it's not always like what you know, it's who you know. Even like when you guys first opened the restaurant in Palm Beach, like you guys didn't know anything about restaurants, but you knew of a chef,
Right.
and the
Yeah.
chef did,
Right.
and then your grind and your hustle, your experiences, your success was transferable because you knew the right people and you had the right mindset.
Everybody who's there is already there because they want to be there. You know what I mean? Like you're hiring professional people who will have an extreme passion, and that's an environment that's a lot more enjoyable for somebody who's really passionate about the industry as well.
I think it's the same in any creative field, right? You need your own style. You need to be able to hone your voice.
Yeah.
And then that's your key differentiator.
Hey, welcome to the Indulge podcast. We have a special guest today. I feel like I always say that, but I'm actually really excited for this one. We may have a star in our presence, but I'm Marlon Gordon.
I'm Melissa Santel. And today we're talking to Max Lipton. He is a restaurateur, and we are going to be talking all about the path to a Michelin star.
Yeah.
Welcome, Max.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So what does it mean to be a restaurateur?
So I guess restaurateur starts with the entrepreneurial spirit. You have to kind of put everything out there on the line every day. Wear your heart on your sleeve. It's all about passion. If you don't have extreme passion for the industry or the restaurant business as a whole, you're not going to make it as a restaurateur, just because the hours and the energy that it takes is it's really it's a sacrifice for not just you, but for everybody else who's close to you as well. So
Is it a sacrifice or an investment? Like I know you guys invest a lot
Sure.
of blood, sweat, and tears, but
Sure.
there's some good stuff on the other end.
yeah,
right?
definitely. I mean, obviously, when passion and hard work come together, great things happen, right? So with that, I think looking at it as an investment is a great way to spin it a little bit.
Yeah, I like that repositioning.
Yeah.
It's a love and passion investment. I feel like you get to wake up and experience the joy of feeding people, which at its core sounds so simple, but there's so much that goes into owning and operating a restaurant. And you did that with your family, which I'm sure
Right.
added some extra layers, right? Tell us about your family restaurant.
Yeah. So in 2013, opened my first restaurant. I went in as a partner with my dad, as you mentioned, and also the chef, who was a Danielle Boulud alum. Definitely, coming in, I was 24 years old. Everybody else had more experience. We actually, my dad hadn't had restaurant experience. He was in the fashion industry. So the only person in the restaurant that had experience was the chef. But we knew that we knew how to make things happen, and we had somebody who knew what they were doing with us. So we jumped right in, and it was definitely growing pains and a lot, in the beginning of doing every single position that there is. I was hosting for like the first 6 months. Then you do busing, then you do this, then you do that, and you have to just kind of ingrain yourself. And that was kind of my crash course into restaurants. And just immersion.
Yeah. Well, when you're learning how to do every single role from back of the house to front of the house, and then operating
Right.
and managing as you were doing, you really get a full taste of what it's like, the ins and outs of a restaurant. Like, there's no more intimate relationship than that.
Exactly. Yeah. I went to Tulane University in New Orleans, but I was just business school, marketing, just typical path for a normal kid there. Nothing to do with culinary, nothing to do with hospitality, but jumping into that from the beginning, like I learned way more in the first 6 months of just actually doing it than I would have in a classroom for sure.
So why do you guys choose to open a restaurant? 'Cause your dad was in fashion, you were doing something
Yeah.
else, but why restaurants?
So it was interesting. My last year at Tulane, obviously New Orleans is a very strong culinary capital in the United States. It has a rich history in the culinary arts. And my last 2 years there, I had a good group of friends that every Wednesday we got together and we chose a different spot around the city, and we went to eat and have fun and enjoy it. And we called ourselves the Lunch Bunch. And,
That's so fun.
and this was been like 2010, 2011. So before social media was really taking off, before Instagram was really, really a thing, we were just doing it, and I would take pictures of my food and, just to have for myself and everything.
Were you putting like the sepia filter on it on Instagram?
Definitely something like that. Maybe was it sepia? Maybe I think I was using like Ludwig or something like that. Yeah, the like bright one,
Yeah.
The rainbow one.
Right. So, and if you go to my Instagram, all the way on the bottom, you'll see those filtered photos. But yeah, it started with that, my passion for cuisine. My dad was retired at the time. He had sold his company that he was based out of New York City with, and he had been retired for a few years. He went to Palm Beach, became a snowbird in Palm Beach, and he was getting kind of restless. Like he's not the kind of guy who can stay still for too long, and he was only in his early 50s at the time, so he still had a lot in the tank, and then for me, like, we just I was like trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I was working on an app for sports betting before FanDuel and DraftKings and all those came out. So we missed our calling, but it would have been cool. And we just happened to have this restaurant right next to us, the condo that my parents got for their snowbird seasons. And we would go there all the time, made friends with the owners, thought it was a cool, interesting business. The location is ridiculous. It's on a pier over the ocean. And we just created a relationship with them. They were getting a little bit up there in years, and one was ill and had to slow down a little bit. And they approached us and were like, hey, not saying we're going to be looking to sell or get out of this, but if we were, are you interested? Do you want to learn a little bit more? So we started that conversation, and 6 months later, we were in the door.
What kind of restaurant was it?
At the time, it was a breakfast and lunch spot that I call kind of like a glorified Greek diner on the beach. It was very traditional Greek diner, a lot of like spinach pies and, Greek salads and, things like that. They were known for their fish and chips, which is one thing though. But yeah, pretty much Greek diner on the beach, breakfast and lunch. But we saw it more as a potential to have a kind of like a tourist destination restaurant in Palm Beach that like could be the crown jewel of that area, because there's nothing like it, on a pier over the ocean like that. So we took that on. We brought in the chef who, as I mentioned, had Daniel Boulud pedigree. He was worked his way up at Danielle in New York, the 2 Michelin star, and then he helped open Cafe Boulud in Palm Beach.
How'd you find the chef?
Yeah, I was just going to ask that.
So completely coincidence. One of my dad's partners in his old endeavor, this chef is his son's best friend. So they've been grew up together. So it was like a nephew to him. And we were, like I said, we were looking to do the restaurant, and we went to that ex-partner for help with investments. And he was like, I'm in, but I'm only in if you take him with you. And so he said, here's the chef, here's this, that. Everybody, all pieces are in place. So, then we can go from there.
My favorite part about this story is how this so seamlessly aligned. Like, you were going to this restaurant at your parents' condo, beach house. You enjoyed it. It was Greek food on the beach.
Like
and then you got blessed with a chef by an investor. And then you had this cool family business.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming you changed up the cuisine, you changed up the brand, etc. So where did you take it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, so the restaurant has been there since 1986. So it's, almost 40-year-old restaurant right now. And we didn't want to change the name because we felt like that had become like an iconic thing there. But we kind of freshened it up a little bit, made it a little bit more modern in the sense of, a little bit more like Nantucket kind of like beach resorty kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And we slowly changed the cuisine to kind of match what we call beach cuisine. And we draw inspiration from all the different beach cultures from around the world. So you'll see a lot of Mediterranean influence. You'll see some Latin influence. You'll see some Southeast Asian influence. Mm-hmm. So you get that from all of the different kind of resort locations from around the world. Because our logo or our motto is where every day's a vacation. So we try to like bring that vacation every single day to the guests.
Smart. Yeah, it's all about how you make people feel, right? You want them to embody that. You can come, relax, watch the ocean, have a drink. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Love that.
And we like to do a lot of fun things, like serve cocktails in like frozen pineapples, or like, you know, do like we have something called the Sea Monster that is like a giant double Tito's Bloody Mary with crab claws coming out of it and shrimp and everything. And it's just like a whole thing. So it's really like, you know, the kind of place where you go and like just to like have a vibe. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've never wanted to meet a sea monster until this very moment. I'm ready to get in the car and go.
Yeah, I don't even like Bloody Marys, but that one I think I would love to try.
Oh, I would love to try it. I am a Bloody Mary gal, but also I'd love to photograph it.
Yeah.
Oh, that
Yeah,
was
it was a fun one. We brought it down to the ocean, and the waves are like crashing on it with the claws all out. It was,
Release the Kraken.
yeah,
I
pretty
can
much.
see it in my brain. Okay, so you started this restaurant with your dad, and you're on the journey. You decided that you loved it, and then where did you go from there?
Yeah. So we did that for a while. And you know, as I mentioned at the beginning, it was just breakfast and lunch, and it was Greek diner. So we went through that transition of doing the beach cuisine. Then year 2, we opened for dinner on the weekends, and then year 3 we opened for dinner, you know, every day. And so now it's 7 days a week, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, 363 days a year. So we kept building that. And then the pandemic hit. Luckily, we are a like 80% outdoor restaurant. So when the restrictions came, or the big restriction came off, we were able to open at like 80-90% capacity. And a lot of people felt really safe coming to us because we were outdoors. So people came through, and everything was looking great. So we decided to buy a second location during that time. So we bought a second location on the same beach, expanded on that. And that obviously, it was a great opportunity, and I'm glad that we did it, but it had a lot of challenges, obviously. There was a lot of challenges with, you know, the fact that it was during the pandemic. There was a lot of challenges with, you know, people wanting to and being available to work and different things. And then when we opened, there were still certain restrictions, and that one was a little less outdoors. So there was a lot going on with that. But through that time, it's a side note, but it is relevant. My ex-fiance at the time was doing her internal medicine residency in Chicago. And through that, I would visit her every 4 to 6 weeks or so. And we would always spend the weekend in Chicago, and then we would hit Michelin star, because here at the time there was no Michelin stars, even Miami and all that. So that was kind of where my love for the Michelin stars came into play, with Chicago during that time. And so I started to get more ingrained in that, being more passionate about that kind of experience. And I had an aha moment at Alinea in Chicago, 3 Michelin star restaurant, which is, it's, you know, unfortunately it's not quite what it used to be. I mean, it's getting back, like they're pushing hard, but my first visit there moved me to tears. It was like one of the most life-changing experiences I've ever had. It made me think to myself, this is what I want to do. Like, this is the type of experience I want to put out. This is what I want to enjoy. This is what I want to give back to the world. And so that was where like the passion for the Michelin and the experiential dining was really born, was through those experiences in Chicago, and ingraining myself in the industry in that city, which really embraced me, which was awesome as well. And then that's where the Instagram started taking off more in that direction. And, you know, I started to seek out more experiences like that, not just in Chicago, but around the world.
Yeah, I will say, following your Instagram account, I feel like I'm a Michelin inspector myself. I'm just like, where are we going next? But it's so cool that you were able to have that one experience that really stuck with you and was so powerful that you were like, hey, I'm going to explore this and I'm going to see it through.
Yeah.
How many Michelin star restaurants do you think you've been to?
Well, I've counted over 200 unique stars. So if you include, you know, you take the stars and put them all together. And that's that's not including a lot of repeat visits at a lot of places. Atomix, for instance, was just named the number 6 restaurant in the world. It's a 2 Michelin-star restaurant in New York City, Korean. I just had my 12th visit there. So it's, there's a lot of these places. Alinea, as I mentioned, I've now been 7 times, and that's, something that like I'll try to go each year, just because I, again, admire what Grant Achatz, the chef, does so much and what he's done for the industry.
So what were your next steps in pursuing that level of excellence within your restaurants?
So it's a good question. I knew that my restaurants at the time, it wasn't really as important to have those types of experiences or that type of like effort or cuisine, put out there. My restaurants in Palm Beach, we do everything from scratch. We do very little frozen food, and everything is homemade, our own recipes, everything like that. So it's not your typical like tourist trap where everything's just kind of brought in from Cheney Brothers and kind of thrown out there for you. We take our time. Your mind will be blown with the amount of storage that we have there and the amount of volume we do. On a typical Sunday in season, between the 2 locations, we're doing 3,000 guests.
Wow.
And it's to go from that restaurant to what you try to do for these Michelin-star restaurants for like 15 people at a time, it's like it's just a complete different level, So I knew at that point that if I wanted to really impact the industry on a different level and like go down that route, that I'd have to break off from what I was doing and kind of pursue it in my own capacity. And that's what happened in 2021. During the summer of 2021, I just decided, we were in a good spot. My brother had just joined us actually at the restaurants in Palm Beach, and he was taking over a lot of my duties, and he's since taken over a lot more, and he's done an incredible job. So I think it was the best decision for all of us anyway. That's when I broke off and started doing my traveling and like trying to network and set myself up for like how to break into that sector.
It's so important, the networking piece. Like, it's not always like what you know, it's who you know. Even like when you guys first opened the restaurant in Palm Beach, like you guys didn't know anything about restaurants, but you knew of a chef,
right?
And the chef did,
right?
And then your grind and your hustle and your experiences, your success was transferable because you knew the right people and you had the right mindset.
Yeah, for sure. I think. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there. That'll happen sometimes too, You think about something and then you're listening, But yeah, I think that going from one section, because they're very, very different, and it's the larger scale, larger format is a lot more about managing the people, and the employees and everything like that. Whereas I feel like at the micro scale up top, like everybody who's there is already there because they want to be there. You know what I mean? Like you're hiring professional people who have an extreme passion, and that's an environment that's a lot more enjoyable for somebody who's really passionate about the industry as well, So I think that makes a big difference, is just the mindset of the employees from one type of restaurant to another. And if you're shooting for those accolades, those stars, those, recognition and everything, and you have a team that is all on the same page with that, it's just a completely different environment.
Yeah, I feel like to get a Michelin star, I mean, like, not only do you have to be exceptional at your job, but you have to be extremely passionate and artistic in a way, because these dishes, they look like art. Like,
absolutely.
It's not just a piece of meat on your on your plate.
Yeah, there's so much thought that goes into it, and planning and seasonality. And you have, so having been to 200 plus Michelin star restaurants, let's call it, you have an incredible amount of insight into what makes a Michelin star restaurant. And so let's talk about the path to get there. Because I know there's a lot of common misconceptions around what Michelin inspectors are looking for, or how often they're visiting a restaurant before they're making considerations for them to get an acknowledgement, whether that's a star or a bib. I feel like a lot of people don't know the Michelin story of how it all began. So let's take it way back
Let's go way
and tell us about how Michelin formed.
Yeah. So one of the biggest things that I think people miss is that the Michelin Tire Company and the Michelin Guide with the stars for the restaurants, they're actually the same company. And so about 100 years ago, when cars were starting to be a little bit more commercial and get on the road a little bit more, Michelin was obviously a French tire company, and they were trying to sell tires. And I think what they were finding was that most people who did own a car, they were just using it to go from their house and to town and then back. And so it wasn't like they weren't driving a lot, so the tires were staying new. So Michelin was thinking to themselves, okay, how can we sell more tires? So how do they get people to sell more tires? So they decided to say, okay, I'm going to tell somebody who lives in Paris that in Provence, there's this incredible restaurant that you have to try. But the only way you're going to get there is if you drive. So they started putting out this guide of all along the route in France of all the best restaurants and best hotels and different things that you could kind of explore. And the main goal was to get more tread on that tires and to sell more tires.
That is genius.
I'm sorry, is that not the most brilliant marketing campaign that is now just the biggest accolade a chef can acquire in the world?
And it's incredible that it's like a pawn almost, right? For a bigger picture, like in a way, because obviously the Michelin Tire Company does a lot more revenue and a lot more business than the stars. But I think people just think of it as a tire company, whereas the Michelin Guide is this prestigious thing, and
it's so funny because hearing that, now I want to go buy Michelin tires. Right? It's just so smart. It's so genius.
Right. Yeah.
And even now, I mean, it's still their initiative. I mean, the star system, it even mentions in the 2 and the 3 stars, 2 is worthy of a detour, 3 is worthy of a special journey. So they're telling you the 3 Michelin stars, it might be 2 hours out of the city, but it's worthy of that journey, So even now, with airplanes use tires, buses, not trains, sorry. But all these transportation, vessels, they're still using Michelin tires, and that's still Michelin Guide's initiative, is to bring people around the world to enjoy the cuisine.
Yeah, and what's so interesting to me is that Michelin Guide is not offered everywhere, and I think that a lot of people don't notice that either. It's definitely something that I reference when I'm planning a trip, so it's like, you got me, Michelin. But yeah, when you're looking, it's not in every city. So how do they decide where to go, where to explore, who's worthy?
So yeah, so again, a lot of Michelin Guide is pretty well kept secrets. So a lot of what I'm gonna be talking about is just kind of observations that I've had and different conversations with different people in the industry, and who may be in the know, may not, but general consensus says that, again, so Michelin is first and foremost a tourism company, right? The Michelin Guide is. It's a tour guide, it's a tour book. So what they do is they create a relationship with the tourism boards in certain regions. And the way I believe that process goes is that they get enough requests or enough recommendations for a region for the excellence in the cuisine there. Then they begin a conversation with the tourism board. And through that, there creates a mutual investment between the tourism board and the Michelin Guide to kind of fund think about, in order to get a Michelin Guide somewhere, you have to have inspectors. And these inspectors are going to be dining nonstop
at very expensive establishments, typically.
Expensive establishments, the highbrow, lowbrow, everything in between. Because remember, they're not just doing the Michelin stars; they have recommendations, they have bib gourmands, they have different things like that too.
Right.
So they're just inspecting, and a number that I heard is that they could be inspecting anywhere between 7 to 9 restaurants a week.
Where do we apply?
Right.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, how do I get in there?
And that, that's but I've also heard that it can be a grind. I can heard that they kind of turn into these accountants, like these food accountants, where they have a checklist and they go in and they, okay, this, and you don't get to kind of enjoy it on the level that like someone like you or I might be able to, where we can go in.
Right. Well, you're working at that point.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it takes away a certain element of like the curiosity and the whimsical and like how fun it is for you, because you're like, okay, I'm like keeping this mental checklist.
Yeah. And then again, with the, the initiative that Michelin puts out there, that these inspectors are so secretive and, incognito, and you're not supposed to have any clue who they are. So there's speculation that it's somebody who can't have a social media presence. There's speculation that it's somebody who won't drink. There's speculation that there's somebody who, won't be overly like kind of friendly, or, you can't create a relationship with a chef. You can't do this, you can't do that, because then you're going to get special treatment. Right. And so the whole point of the Michelin guide is to make sure that they're inspecting you on like your average day, just what your average
at the
par
most
is that you're putting
level.
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder what the criteria is to be considered an inspector. I mean, they kind of sound like secret agents or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Secret shoppers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I haven't been able to peel back the lens on that, on the details of that. But I know that they're longtime industry professionals, and then there's also a very, very rigorous training process that you go through in order to, before you're put into the field, for that as well.
Well, it's so interesting because, when I was younger, what I wanted to be when I grew up was a food critic, right? I'm thinking back, and I think the core memory was because of my best friend's wedding, when Julia Roberts is a food critic, and that was one of my favorite movies as a kid. Anyway, they open up the movie and she's reviewing this like 1 or 2 star restaurant in New York City, and I was like, damn, what a job. How do those two elements play together? So like Pete Wells, for example, he's been in the industry forever, sadly just stepped down. But is it like someone of his caliber that is a Michelin inspector, or?
I think they're not using recognizable people.
Right.
So that's, so Pete Wells would be out, I would think, because again, I think he would be somebody that he walks into a restaurant, people recognize him, they're going to roll out the red carpet,
Yeah.
Unless they decide, hey, we'll move you to a different region and maybe people don't know you, or, I don't know. That is the good question. I think that it tends to be, I would think it tends to be people who are a little bit less in the spotlight. But it's more people, maybe somebody who was a chef for 20 years, or I don't, again, it is speculation. It's really like, that is the one thing that you can give Michelin Guide, is that they keep their secrets really, really close to their chest, and they're really, really, they really want to stress the importance of anonymity and fairness within the, and the credibility that they have.
Yeah, well, I think that's also why it's so sought after. There's so much mystery behind every element of the experience, and it is just, they've created this thing that is such a high accolade that people, you want it. You have to have the passion and the drive to go after it.
Yeah.
I know there's specific things that they look for when they're visiting. So what do you think those things are?
Yeah. So they actually do list, right? So that's something that they have. They make it known, even though it's still pretty vague. They make known there's kind of like 5 criteria that they look for, starting with something as simple as the value, what you're getting for the value of what you're paying for. Then you have the quality of the ingredients. You have the technique, the level of technique on the plates. You have the personality of the chef that comes through, and then there's one more that
Atmosphere,
I'm missing
maybe?
here. It actually doesn't. It has. So that's the interesting thing when it comes to the Michelin Guide and stars, in particular stars, it is only about the food. So it's ambiance, service, all those things. The only way that those affect stars is if they actually directly affect how you're experiencing the food.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's so you hear those like those stories about the person, the waiter who dropped the fork, and they're like, oh, there goes the star, right?
Yeah.
That's not the case. The only way that would be the case is if he dropped the fork, the food was sitting there already for 10 minutes. They had to go back and get a fork and bring it back. Now the food's cold. That can affect it. But it has to do with the food on the plate. And the interesting thing too is it doesn't even matter what plate you're putting it on. In theory, you could serve an entire meal on paper plates and it can still earn a Michelin star. So it's really about the actual food on the plate. And I think one of the biggest things, and I think one of the biggest things that I would say for chefs that are really aspiring to get stars, and especially beyond the 1-star level, the personality of the chef is the biggest thing. Because in a world, especially with social media now and, all these cookbooks and everything, and, it's easy to start to like copy and kind of go down that route and like the trends and do all that, But when I look at a dish from like French Laundry, I can say that's a Thomas Keller dish. Like, it goes back to art, right? That's a Picasso, that's an Andy Warhol, that's this, that's that. It's the same with cuisine. Mm-hmm. When you look at these plates, you can tell that's Ryan Rotino from John in DC. That's JP Park from Atomix. You can, like, when you look at these dishes, you can tell that those are from those chefs.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And that's, that I think is the biggest thing that for these chefs that are aspiring is you have to find your vision, your voice, and your aesthetic, and like lean heavily into that, because that is how you set yourself apart from everybody else.
Authenticity.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's the same in any creative field, right? You need your own style. You need to be able to hone your voice.
Yeah.
And then that's your key differentiator. I love being able to see like people's photography styles, like food photography, and without even looking at their handle on Instagram, I'm like, oh, that's this person. It just helps you relate to that person and identify with them, and honestly builds a lot of trust when you know that you can anticipate that experience with them again and again.
Yeah.
I think that that's such a powerful element of it too, that, in dining and hospitality, like at the core of it, you're taking care of someone, you're being convivial, you're providing an experience. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of trust that goes into that.
Yeah, for sure.
So I have to ask you, what is your favorite, or do you have a favorite chef?
Favorite chef? I mean, I mentioned in the beginning of our conversation, Alinea in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And just that. So Grant Achatz is the chef there, and he is. I don't know if you are familiar with his story at all.
Yeah, I watched his Chef's Table episode. Yeah. It was heartbreaking.
So that Chef's Table episode was the catalyst of all of this. So I watched that first, and when I watched that Chef's Table episode, I immediately bought the cookbook. I had never cooked in my life before. It was not something that I really enjoyed doing at home. But I bought that cookbook. This was like 2018 or something like that. And bought a bunch of gadgets because it's a very molecular gastronomy there. And started just like messing around with everything in there. But that Chef's Table episode, I watched like 5 or 6 times because I was just like, there's no way something like this exists. Like this is actually a restaurant. This is food. This is cuisine. This is an experience that you can have. And watching his story and the food that he creates and the way that he thinks about those processes, and just like how it's not just about it is about the food, but it's not just about the food. It's about the whole experience and everything that's going on around you and all that. And it's just, for me, he's somebody that will always be like at the top of my list, just because the inspiration that he's created throughout the entire industry on not just the cuisine level, but the experiential level of what the experiences he puts out.
Yeah, I think that the way that he persevered through all of the health issues that he had, and just like, it's so admirable to watch someone kind of be at the top of their game, and then all of a sudden their resources are taken away from them, and then to relearn it and get back in and be better than even before. It is just like, damn, that is passion.
Yeah.
Defined.
And I guess to touch on it for, I guess, because maybe not everybody knows his story. He was running the best restaurant in the world, or best restaurant, at least in America, Alinea, and was diagnosed with stage 4 tongue cancer as a chef. And they told him 2 things. They said, most likely you're not going to live, but also we're probably going to have to take your tongue, your jaw, everything, all that. And he was like nearing not giving up, but it was like hope was being lost. And University of Chicago reached out to him and said, hey, we have a new treatment that we're trying out. We want to test it out on you. And they tested it out on him, and it worked. And so he was able to save, most of his tongue and his jaw and everything. And he couldn't taste anything. As the best chef in the country, couldn't taste. So he was going off of memory, and he was going off of his 2 sous chefs that he had with him. And one day he continued to taste, even though he couldn't taste. And one day he tastes and he goes, oh, it's so salty. He goes, it's so salty. So his taste came back eventually, and now, he's still just an incredible chef. But that like background and that perseverance, it's passion, and it's just like, no matter what, he's like, I'm number one, and this isn't going to stop me from staying at the top.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
I know Alinea has been high on top of my list to want to be at, but I have not yet visited it.
Me neither. It's on my list too.
Yeah.
It's a sad time.
We need to fix this.
I need to get to Chicago immediately.
Yeah. It's incredible. It really is.
So what's your favorite city to go to eat?
That's a great question. Copenhagen is pretty spectacular. The level of what they do, everything there is next level. Alchemist may be the greatest experience on the planet, not just restaurant, but just in general.
Why?
It's ridiculous. So Alchemist is, first off, they took this warehouse, I think they put $15 million into it. And it's a 7 to 8 hour, 50 course, multi-sensory, multi-room experiential thing that's just like the most mind-blowing. Like, as I mentioned, 7 or 8 hours, it feels like 2. And you're just going from room to room to room. There's like performances in some rooms. There's visuals. One of the main dining room is a 40-seat kind of domed planetarium. And they project these images onto the ceiling while you're dining that coincide with what you're eating, with all these audio cues. And I mean, it's just, we went there. I've only been once, and this was in the end of 2021, winter 2021. And they told us when we started that the theme was emotion. And we're like, okay, emotion, cool. There were like 4 or 5 times throughout that meal that like we clearly felt like different emotions being attacked. Like, not just like subtle, like I think I was moved to tears like 3 different times for 3 different emotions during that meal. It was insane. And
so cool.
Including one where I think it was the hardest that me and anybody in my group has laughed in our entire lives too. Like, it's just like, yeah, I don't know what they do, who they work with, because they work obviously with the chefs and they're creating, but they have to work with another, like, I don't know, psychology, group or something like that really knows how to pick people's emotions. And, every single layer of that experience is just thought out from top to bottom.
Yeah, it looks really immersive. Everything that I've ever seen about them, and it's funny because I spent some time reading reviews about them one day, and just like some people don't get it. You
Yeah.
know, some people went through the experience and they were like, I don't get it. But I feel like if you don't allow yourself to be in the moment and trust the process of that, then
Yeah.
you probably won't.
I mean,
You know?
it's definitely, yeah, you have to go in like just being like, this is gonna be weird. You know?
Like weird and funky and tasty
Yeah,
place.
like they're serving you a course that is petrified butterflies. Like it's just actual butterflies, and so you're eating just actually just eating a butterfly
I have
with
to
some
ask.
fruit and nectar and all that.
What does that taste like?
It's more of a texture.
Yeah?
Yeah. There isn't much flavor to it. It was masked a little bit more because like it was sitting on top of some fruit with like some juice. So it was like kind of like they were pollinating the fruit and you're eating it all together. But he got the equivalent of the I guess the FDA or whatever. So whatever the equivalent of the FDA is in Copenhagen, he got them to approve the consumption of butterflies just for that restaurant. So that
Crazy.
like
I love it.
because
It's crazy.
and he proved that there were like 7 invasive species of butterflies in Denmark. So like they're like any one of these you can now serve as cuisine.
That is
Wow.
dedication right
Yeah.
there.
Talk about dedication. He's the one that's also doing that the Michelin-starred meal in space. So they're planning that for the end of next year.
Are you serious?
And I believe it's like $500,000 a person.
Will Bill Gates be there? Yes or no?
Probably.
If he has
and
internet.
yeah.
Elon, he'll be there.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I think he's doing it with Elon. I think.
course he
yeah,
is.
I think SpaceX is involved with it. Getting up until that point, what they've been doing with SpaceX is they were fermenting miso in space as well. So they are actually cooking and doing processes in the space station, and then they're bringing it back down and they're serving it to you in the restaurant. And one of the dishes that they serve to you, that space miso, they use actual particles from moon dust to create the plateware. So
That
you're
is
touching
wild.
the moon while
I
you're
need to get
eating
my
something
hands
that
on
was
that.
fermented in space. It's
That
crazy.
is
Tableware, plateware, all of it is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And I know at Alchemist too, they have the coolest, I'm sure, all custom plateware that they're using to help with presentation. I feel like that also delivers half of the experience in itself.
Yeah.
And it's not really a consideration that like the average person thinks about is like, not only is what's on the plate important, but the plate itself and the service vessel is equally as important.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, and, you know, we talked about, again, the criteria for Michelin stars and having it be about the food on the plate and everything, but the vessel itself can dictate how you eat the food. So it is also a very important, you know, component if that's what you want to impart into the dish, you know?
Yeah.
And it's, I think that beautiful plateware is something that is, it's something that is a lasting impression on people for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I toured the Fortessa studio that they have now in Tampa, and I was just like, I was with Cassandra Gonsmart, who works there, and she's on the marketing and event side, and she was just showing me basically everything that they're hand making, creating. Now they're partnering with different glassware companies and talking about the events and how each one is being used. And I was just like, wow, there's so much to learn on all sides.
Yeah.
But it is fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. It's awesome.
So Michelin stars aside, what do you expect? Like, what makes a good experience for you whenever you go out to eat?
I think obviously flavor is the biggest thing. Like if I'm not, if there are a bunch of crazy ingredients and it's all like beautiful and this and that, I'm enjoying it. But at the end of the day, like you want things that are going to taste amazing.
Like butterflies.
Like butterflies, like butterflies. Although, you know, the biggest thing is to find a way to do both, right? Is to find a way to serve you things that are very new or strange or exciting, but also have them taste almost familiar in a way, or you know, kind of that bring that nostalgia in. And that's something that I think that a restaurant like Atomix does really well in New York, that I mentioned earlier. It's a modern Korean restaurant, and when you go there, they give you these menu cards that explain the history behind each dish, why it's important to the chef, and then it lists every single ingredient in the dish. Like not just the main ingredients, but every single ingredient. And when you're reading that ingredient list, you maybe have heard of like 4 or 5 things out of the like 10 or 15 that are in the dish. As someone who's a traveled diner, right? But then when you eat the food, you're expecting it to be weird and strange and all these different flavor combinations that you haven't experienced before, and somehow they make it taste familiar. And I think it's like just different flavor profiles that resonate with everybody. But it's really, I mean, you'll have something that's like got like sea cucumber on top that's like poking out all over the place, and it looks like an alien creature, but it'll taste like an omelet, you know. And so it's, you know, that those are the experiences that I think are most exciting to me, are the ones that like definitely bring that avant-gardeness, that like strangeness, and that novelty, but then also like really focus and are intentional with the flavors that they're creating as well.
It's almost like they're playing a mind game with you, like a fun, trippy mind game.
Yeah. I love when an experience is sensory and you actually, to your point, you're sitting down and you're able to identify with something that looks strange, but you're like, I've had this before. This feels nice and familiar. Like it makes you want to keep taking more bites of it, right? Otherwise, you're just like, what is a strange sea caterpillar that's sitting in front of me?
It tastes like an omelet.
That tastes like an omelet.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's to go back to Alinea and the sensory aspect of it. They were always known for being like one of the pioneers with the sensory experiences along with dining. And something as simple as going back to plateware is where, well, since the pandemic, they've been custom making every plateware from glass. So they have a person who does all of it. Whatever they come out with a new dish, they're creating a new glassware for it. And one of the dishes that they have is an uni rice that kind of plays off of like mac and cheese a little bit. But they created the plateware that they made a sea urchin out of glass. So you're holding this glass sea urchin with these gold spikes coming out of it, and they have you hold it to eat it, so that you're feeling like you're getting stabbed with the sea urchin while you're eating it. So it's like kind of like
clever,
kind of, you know, putting like immersing you into that experience, you know, of like picking the sea urchin out of the ocean and like chucking it and doing all that, you know, and then eating it. And it's just telling little stories through just that is another way that restaurants grab you in.
Sounds like so much fun.
I know. The most fun. Well, one question that we always ask our guests is, I like to say it like, what's your death row meal? Marlon will ask you, if you could have one more meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Well, let's call it the death row dish. You want to do that?
Is it death
Has
row
a nice
dish?
ring to it.
Okay.
Because those are two different things.
They are.
Are
All
they?
right,
Death row dish versus what I would eat the rest of my life.
We'll go back to my concept. Your
Okay.
last meal.
Yeah, your last meal, your final meal. No pressure with the death chair.
Yeah, right.
No, but that's, I mean,
that could be a sensory experience. I mean,
yeah, right. Ultimate sensory experience. It's like the menu, right?
right?
Oh my God, that movie was nuts.
That is a really, really difficult question, because inherently, you know, with these meals, the reason why I like tasting menus and dining like this so much is because you get such a variety, right? And that's like one of the things that I struggle with in a la carte restaurants is ordering one thing. So death row meal is tough. If you were to say to me, I had one more.
Wait, I can give you a breakfast, lunch, and dinner if that helps, and a dessert.
Well, I mean, listen. Okay.
I'm happy to do that for you.
No, this one dish.
I tried a daily tasting menu.
Right. I mean, listen. I would say if we're going straightforward with it, I am a pizza fiend. I love pizza so much. I could eat it every day. When I'm in New York, especially, I am doing pizza tasting menu, pizza tasting menu, pizza.
As
like
one should in New York.
It goes. So, So, if you were to say like that, what's the last thing you want to eat? It'd probably be pizza.
Okay, and
kind of
where's
pizza?
pizza coming from?
That's a good one. I have like a top 5 in New York. The one that I usually go to as like my number one is John's of Bleecker, in Greenwich Village, New York.
Yeah.
And what sets them apart from the rest, in your opinion?
It may be a lot of it may be nostalgia, but also, I mean, they're known as like one of the Mount Rushmores of New York style pizza, and they just, you know, the quality of the ingredients, the crispiness of the crust, like the ratio of everything, like it just is there. And I think they've been using the same ovens for like however long they've been open, 60, 70 years or something like that. So
they're well seasoned.
Yeah. It's definitely like the place that I recommend the most for like an old school New York slice. And then for the like more modern kind of take on it, there's Mama's 2 and there's Le Industrie. Those are like 2 that I found that are really like perfect slices of pizza.
It's funny that you mentioned pizza and nostalgia, because one of my earliest memories was of me eating pizza at a pizza place in Queens called Gabby's.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's like literally one of my first memories I can think of.
Yeah.
Is it still open?
It's still open. So I was born in New York, but I moved when I was 4. I still claim that I'm from New York. I'm a New Yorker, all right?
funny.
I'm not a Floridian.
I do the same thing.
Same.
We
I was
moved
born in
when
New
I
York
was
too.
6, so.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I moved away, and I didn't go back until I was like 33. So I was gone for a while. But when I was there, I went by my old house in New York, and I went to Gabby's, and it was still there, but it was being run by the kids. So it was super cool. And like I literally remember like walking into it looked the same. It was mind blowing.
Yeah.
It was awesome. Pizza was delicious.
That's how I feel about Pizza Carnival in Long Island.
Oh, yeah.
So I was born in Port Jeff, and Pizza Carnival was like the spot. My dad worked there. My grandma worked there as a waitress. It was crazy, and it's still open. Anytime I'm in Long Island, I go.
So it sounds like you're gonna go on a pizza tour, hit all the favorite spots in New
Oh,
York.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
going to New York next week. So Landry has been on my list.
Yeah,
I went
definitely
to
have to.
Feeney last time, and I loved it.
Feeney was good
Their
too.
white slice was delicious.
Yeah. It was really good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well-
I had that actually last week. So
Love it.
yeah.
Well, hey, man, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. It was a pleasure talking with you, learning more about the Michelin stars and your passions and your favorite foods and pizza, right? Everybody loves pizza.
Everybody
Yeah.
loves pizza.
Pizza's an awesome note to end on. Thanks.
Violet Stone in St. Pete.
Oh, I've been.
That's the best pizza I've found in the Tampa area.
It's good.
Okay.
Have you been?
I have not been there yet. I'm
Okay,
gonna go this
well-
weekend, though.
Also maybe the best cheesesteak I've ever had. Definitely the best outside of Philly. But it's
I saw pictures of it. It looks massive.
It's huge. I mean, they do a small and a large, but they bake their own bread for it, and it's just like it's really good.
All right,
Okay,
so we need to go on a
noted.
food tour with you or something
Yeah.
around
Yeah,
the Bay Area.
take us to the
Yeah,
places.
for sure.
All right, but seriously,
Yeah.
thanks, man. Appreciate
Yeah,
you.
no,
Yeah.
thank you guys very much. I appreciate you having me on. It's
Yeah,
fun. A lot of fun.
course.
And thank you
Thanks.
for watching and listening.
Ciao.